A story that gave me strength to confront my sins. John walked slowly and thoughtfully across the living room a few feet from where his wife, Ruth, sat reading a book. Ruth could sense the turmoil in his mind, both by his nervous walking and his heavy sighs. She thought with dread of the upcoming conversation and how it would affect their lives. She sat in anticipation and fear, pretending to read. Finally, John turned to her and with dread in his head asked, "Ruth?" She looked up at him and held her breath, raising her eyebrows in mute question. "Ruth, I need to talk to you, and I hope you can listen to me before you react to what I'm about to say." Oh, God, she thought. She had been waiting for this for over a month now, but only now she realized that she wasn't quite ready to hear it. Not ready for her life to change forever. She exhaled heavily and simply said, "Okay, John." She put the book on her lap and clutched it tensely in her hands. John slowly sat down on the couch a meter away from her, turning as close to her as possible, put his big paw on her dainty hand and said, "I have not been a very good husband to you lately, doing things I'm not proud of and dishonoring you. I want to change that from today if you'll let me." Ruth's mind was filled with hope, flavored with anger and sadness. Emotions she hadn't allowed herself to feel during the last long and difficult month. "Are we talking about your affair with Gina Laszlo or something else?" There was more bitterness in her tone than she wanted to show. John blushed slightly, lowered his eyes and whispered, "Damn it. When? How long have you known?" "Over a month," she answered emotionlessly. "For the last 21 years, you've been putting on your police uniform and walking out the door, and I kept wondering if the day would come when you wouldn't come home because some stoned asshole killed you. For the last month, I've been wondering if the day would come when you'd walk out the door and not come back because you decided to pursue a relationship with Gina. I don't know what's worse. In fact, I've thought about killing you myself, so I guess the second scenario is worse." "Oh, Ruth, how can I tell you how sorry I am? I've canceled everything since yesterday. We were going to meet this afternoon, and I called her and told her it was over and I wouldn't see her again, and I was serious. I swear I will never, ever, ever, ever do anything like that again. Please, can you forgive me? And I know I have a lot of work to do to get you back completely, and I'm willing to do whatever you want, hell, I don't even want to say it. Even if it means giving up on you and not fighting the terms of your divorce. It's up to you. It's in your hands. You tell me. You want me to die? Just say the word and I'll eat my revolver." Ruth thought for a moment, then answered coldly, "I want you to die. But please do it somewhere where I don't have to clean up after you. Blood is so hard to get out of good carpeting." John's eyes widened. Are you kidding me?" Ruth looked at him with a raised eyebrow and said, "You see, you shouldn't make ridiculous proposals to an offended woman. One might find oneself forced to fulfill promises one might not want to keep. No, silly, I don't want you to kill yourself, but I'm keeping the I can kill you myself option open." Ruth held out her right hand and studied the back of it thoughtfully. "I see diamonds in the near future, however." A wry smile appeared on John's face. "Damn it. She's amazing. Even in the worst situation, she can find something to take the edge off and make a joke about it. I just adore that woman." As these thoughts ran through his head, his demeanor softened, but the guilt of his betrayal rolled on with renewed vigor. How could he do this to her? His love, his partner. Suddenly, Ruth became very serious, her voice low and hard. "John, for the past few weeks I have cried for you, been depressed, hated you, been sick for you, grieved for us and for myself, and still, I love you. You're an asshole. How could you do this to me, to us? To me?" She was crying, no, sobbing, and her little fists were beating against his chest. John pulled her to him and hugged her as she sobbed. His eyes filled with tears, his body shaking from the surging emotions. He rocked her gently and repeated, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. She continued to sob and periodically hit him with her clenched fists with the words, "You broke your vow. Broke your vow." Minute after minute passed. They sobbed together, clinging tightly to each other for mutual support, perhaps for the first time in months, but they were together. Together, they would find a way through this and come out the other side. They continued to rock and huddle together and sob for what seemed like hours, with the occasional pounding of small, angry fists on their ribs and chests. The road to them proved to be long and rocky. Outbursts of rage, accusations, and name-calling were commonplace for Ruth. Sullen, guilt-filled apologies and attentiveness to Ruth's every whim were a staple of John's daily existence. They slept in the same bed. Ruth reasoned that she had slept with him when she knew about his affairs, before his confession, and saw no reason why she shouldn't sleep with him now. Besides, she told him, it's easier to keep an eye on you if I can see you. She often wore her prettiest nightgowns and even bought very attractive outfits to wear to bed, but made it clear that they would only sleep in that bed until she decided otherwise. After showering, she would stand in the bedroom without turning off the lights and dry herself off, showing off her gorgeous naked form, something she had never done before. In bed, she used perfume and makeup for the sole purpose of driving John crazy with lust and desire. At various times of the day, she would turn on sensual music, perform a slow, undulating dance in front of John's wide-open eyes and open mouth, and then get dressed again and return to her previous duties. She could be very cruel. During this terribly frustrating and seemingly endless dry period, John seemed to walk around with a permanent attachment to her. Ruth began calling John at unexpected, unpredictable times during his workday to see where he was, and even called other police officers working the same shift and asked them to have John answer the phone at their workplace to make sure John was indeed where he said he would be. To say John was on a short leash is an understatement, but he accepted that this was his price for returning to Ruth's heart. Even the constant taunts from his shift mates he bore with stoic calm, chiding them for the fact that they might be in their shoes or worse if they ever stumbled. He was learning his lesson. One night, about 2.5 months after his confession, John slowly awoke to find Ruth lying on his stomach, rocking frantically and panting heavily. The only thought John's numbed brain could bear was, beautiful, fucking beautiful. After catching her breath and recovering from her frenzied high, Ruth finally clutched his face tightly in her hands, looked John straight in the eye, her blazing green eyes visible even in the very faint light of the darkened bedroom, and said in a voice shaking with excitement, "You're mine, asshole! All mine, and don't you ever forget it again! If you ever cheat on me again, I swear I'll nail part of you to the headboard of my bed and send the rest of you packing. That's clear!" She slammed her fists on both of his shoulders for extra convincing. John ran a rough hand over her face, kissed her lips gently, and whispered, "Yes, yes, my love. I am yours. Forever. I swear. Thank you. Thank you. What a fool I've been. Never. Never again. I swear. I swear. I swear." They hugged each other, thinking quietly about where they had been, what they had almost lost, and where the road would take them next. John kissed the top of Ruth's head and gently stroked her back. This was heaven. He thanked everything that was sacred to him for this moment, and for what it portended. After a long, lingering silence, Ruth spoke softly, but with a note of misgiving. "John, I need you to answer me 2 questions. Why Gina? And what made you break up with her and talk to me about it?" John shuddered, not wanting to disturb this precious moment, and definitely not wanting to turn to that page of his memories that was the cause of all the pain and struggle they had just gone through. He pondered silently for a long minute, and then said quietly, "Baby, I'll tell you everything you want to know. I promise." "Why Gina?" I think, quite simply. She'd been hitting on me for months, stopping by the station to bring me lunch and just talk, always talking about how lonely and agitated she was after Bill's murder and that if I could help her, she'd be very grateful. I think she just decided that since her loved one was gone, she should go all in, and I was that all in for her. It was too easy, and she was feeding my old ego. I really felt sorry for her. She was turning into a regular cop groupie. At this point, Ruth interjected into the conversation. A cop groupie? Wow! Jesus, John, she's almost 40. That doesn't make her a cop fanatic, more of a ball of dust to me. If you were cheating with Celia Johansson, I'd just walk into your office, shoot you 3 times, and give up. There's no way I could compete with that little hottie. Hell, if she looked at me askew, I'd make love to her. And I'm not even close to being attracted to a woman. So much for cop groupie. I have to admit, Gina has the most beautiful breasts money can buy. Would you like me to buy you some plastic breasts for you to play with? John stopped her firmly, but there was a hint of playfulness in his tone. Hell no! I love your sweet cupcakes, and you're not touching my favorite toys, okay? Ruth pretended to salute, giggled softly, and simply replied, Yes, sir. John paused for a long moment, then sighed. As for the second part of your questions, I'll answer, but to be clear, I need you to read something. Could you hold that question until morning? I'll take the day off and tell the whole story. Does that sound fair? Oh my gosh, you're going to take the day off for this? It better go well or you might be out of luck for a long time. There was a slight chuckle in her voice, letting him know that the old Ruth was back and that they would make it work. He said a silent prayer of thanks again, kissed her on the top of her head, and they drifted off to sleep, still clinging to each other as if there was a chance that the other might somehow disappear. When the sun came up, John and Ruth were still lying in a tender embrace. John awoke first and looked up at the gently sleeping naked angel. Her body was facing him, and she was spread out, almost covering the left side of his body. Her head rested on his chest. Her hair spread across his chest, and her left arm encircled the underside of his rib cage. When she was near him, he felt wonderful and sensed her closeness. He kissed her lightly on the top of her head, but she didn't move. As he went over the night's events in his mind, the thought occurred to him that he had put his underwear on in bed. The question immediately arose, how the hell did she manage to get them off him without waking him up? And what happened to them? After a quick look around, the answer was immediately clear. On either side of his prostrate figure, he saw the edges of his briefs, or what was left of them, spread apart from his body like short wings. She had just cut the briefs off his body and tossed the top off to reach him. He laughed softly until the thought occurred to him that she might as well have made him capable of singing soprano in the Vienna Boys Choir. At that thought, he swallowed, decided that if she had taken advantage of him while he slept, he should do the same to her. He carefully rolled her over onto her back and began sweetly seducing her sleeping body. She opened one eye, giggled softly, and whispered in a husky voice, "Cover me when you're done," then closed her eye and began snoring loudly, trying to keep a smile on her lips. John couldn't help but laugh heartily. For the first time in many months, they made love deeply and passionately, interrupted only for John to call the station to say he was taking a day off. The sergeant, hearing John's request, grinned. "Damn it, John, if she kills you, be sure to call me first. Glad you've come to your senses, my friend. Enjoy your time off. You lucky asshole." After finally leaving the bed, where more had happened in one night than had happened in years, the couple sat down at the breakfast table, quietly sipping their coffee and contemplating their future. All thoughts were of the times to come, when they would still be together, and perhaps the promise, or at least the hope of better days ahead. To lighten things up a bit, John decided to ask in a joking way a question. What happened last night? With a Cheshire Cat grin and a slight chuckle in his voice, he said, "You were fucking amazing, girl, and I didn't know you were capable of that." Especially the part where you cut my goddamn underpants off. That really turned my head." Ruth looked up from her coffee cup with a sly, amused grin, her green eyes twinkling. "Well, if you want to know, after I teased you with my nighttime demonstration, as well as the dance, I was as excited as a herd of wild mares in season. Last night I was lying with my back to you and you kind of pressed up against me and I felt you and I just couldn't take it anymore. You were freezing, so I flipped you over on your back, took a pair of scissors, cut off your underwear and climbed aboard." She cast a sly look at him and winked. John shook his head and smiled broadly. Gradually, the smile faded from John's face, and he looked thoughtfully at Ruth for a moment before quietly leaving the room and returning a few minutes later with several folded sheets of paper in his hands. "Ruth," he said hesitantly, "you asked me last night what made me stop seeing Gina, and now I want to answer that question. Again, whatever you want to know about all of this, ask, and I'll answer as fully and truthfully as I can. Please know that I have never stopped loving you, caring for you, and wanting you. I know it sounds like bullshit after what I did to you, to us, but I swear it's true. It was all about ego and excitement. I hate myself for what I did and I wish I could fix it. For your information, she's never, not once, not even close to being as hot, beautiful, sexy, loving, damn unbridled," here he snickered, "as you are even on the worst day. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I won't put this us in jeopardy again. As for what gave me a kick in the ass and opened my eyes to what I was doing, that's what happened that led to my admission of guilt." John took a deep breath. "A couple weeks before our talk, I was working on a report on a dead body that was found in an alley in one of the dirtiest parts of downtown. I went to the coroner's office and examined the body. The body belonged to a woman in her 30s whose hands were shredded and chapped, as if she was unaccustomed to hard work, but had recently practiced it. She had been robbed and strangled to death. No ID, nothing by which one could tell who she was. A Jane Doe case. Nothing out of the ordinary, but something about her made me suspicious. I felt like this was a case I was going to have to work on. I had a couple of patrolmen canvass the neighborhood, and we were able to find out that she worked as a cook at a fast food cafe. The cafe paid her in cash and didn't know exactly what her name was. They just called her Sad Sadie, Sad Princess, or Sadie when addressing her. The guy we talked to said she was always sad about something, but kept it all to herself. She lived in a shitty apartment next to an abandoned building where drug addicts and runaway kids congregated, and we found her personal belongings in various places in the abandoned building and a few things not worth stealing in her trashed apartment. I was going through her old coat, which had once been quite expensive, but was pretty beat up at that point. In the torn part of the coat, I found this letter. At this point, he was holding pieces of paper, which she had apparently hidden and intended to send, but never did. I read the letter, hoping it would tell me more about who she was. It was 2 days before I came to you to confess. From the letter, we were able to find out who she was, and through interviews and surveys last week, we were able to come up with her killer. As we were chasing the perpetrator, he had the good sense to run across the street and get hit by a truck. He died on the spot, saving us a bunch of paperwork and the city the expense of prosecution. Anyway, this letter kept haunting me, so I made a copy and reread it again. I'll read it for you, or you can read it yourself, whichever you prefer. Ruth looked intently at John and asked him to read it to her so she could see how it affected him. John began to read. Dear Ben, I know you probably don't want me to ever call you that way, but to me, that's exactly what you are. I can't express how sorry I am for what I did to you and the kids. I can never get over my betrayal of you. I'm sorry, Ben. I've become someone I've always looked at with utter disgust. How could this have happened? What happened to the good, faithful wife and mother you used to be? For 6 months, I lived a lie. I looked you in the eye, smiled, and joked with you, when deep down I knew that at the same time I was cheating on you with another man. I hate myself for that. My dear, sweet husband, It's important to me that you know you did nothing wrong. No little thing, no forgetfulness on your part justifies the pain I caused you. It's my fault, and mine alone. A man, not my husband, was complimenting me and flirting with me until I fell for his stupid tricks. What a fool I was to trade your daily attention and support for a few well-chosen words about my looks and intelligence. Somehow, when you said those words, they didn't mean as much. They should have. But they didn't. Now I fear I will never again hear your voice or the sweet laughter of our children. I can't look into your eyes and see the hurt and disgust in them, so I just decided to disappear and let you move on with your life and find a new love. Someone who will love you the way you should be loved. You deserve that, and I want that for you with all my heart. I know you can file for divorce, saying I left you. Then nothing would have to be shared and you could continue to raise our children the same way you always have. You are a good father, and I know you will continue to do what is best for them. I still remember with horror the day you found out about Phil and me. When Phil's wife came in that day and said she had something for me, I didn't know how to react. When she opened her huge purse, as if pulling something out of it, and hit me with it, I was caught off guard. When she stood over me and called me a cheater, it was like I finally realized what I had really done. The worst part was when you came to help me and she showed you pictures of me and Phil together. You came over to help me and protect me from Janine with such a concerned look on your face. I watched in horror as your face changed from caring and loving to surprised, hurt, and finally full of contempt. When you helped me up off the floor, I thought everything would be okay. But when you walked me to the door, shoved me out the door and locked it, I realized I'd lost. I deserved it. But it still took me by surprise. When you threw my clothes and belongings all over the lawn, screaming at me in pain, I realized I couldn't look you in the eye anymore, and I didn't deserve anything from you, so I took what I could carry and left. Please don't hate me. And when the kids ask about me, could you please let them have good memories of me? That's all I ask. I'm working, but I won't give my name because I don't want you to find me if you're interested. Someday, maybe when I'm stronger, I'll let you contact me if you want to. Perhaps I'll let my sister be my mediator when I'm ready to meet you. A lot has to happen before then. I will always love you, Ben, and I hope that someday you will find it in your heart to forgive me. I don't know how to end this letter, so I'll just say goodbye and tell you that I love you and our children more than you can imagine. Mary. John finished reading and looked longingly at Ruth. I read the letter and said to myself, looking back, I had to recognize exactly what I was doing and how it would hurt you if you knew about it. I realized I had to put a stop to it and make things as right as I could under the circumstances. Ruth touched John's arm. I guess I owe a lot to that poor woman, and I hope she has peace now and somehow knows that her story has helped others learn from her mistakes. What will happen to Mary and her family? John smiled sadly. 2 weeks ago, I personally took the original letter and Mary's belongings to Ben and told him the story. He was devastated. It seems he had been trying to find Mary to fix their family life. The poor guy never got around to letting Mary know that he forgave her and wanted her back in his life. So now his children will never see their mother again, and their father will carry the burden of grief and guilt for kicking her out, and there is no way to reverse the chain of events. Ruth squeezed John's hand sympathetically. It must have been hard for you to tell Ben about his wife. John nodded slowly. I took the task as a kind of atonement, penance, so to speak. He needed to be told, and their story gave me the strength to confront my sins, so I was to be the one to face Ben face to face. There was silence in the room for a while, and then John sighed and said, Unless you want to talk about other aspects of this mess, I want to take a shower, and then we can come up with a plan for the rest of our day. Sorry, babe, Ruth intervened. Your day is already scheduled. First, you'll shower, but you won't be alone. and I expect your hands and other parts of your body to do a great job of providing me with a very pleasant experience. Second, we'll get dressed for a day on the town where I'll be treated to a sumptuous lunch and the purchase of that diamond ring I saw in my future. Remember? Third, we're going to figure out how to run into old Gina Laszlo and really rub her nose in it. I win, she loses. Any questions? As they headed upstairs to the bedroom and shower, John just had to be savvy by saying, "Yes, I do have one question. Can we also put calling Celia Johansson on the to-do list and think about having a hot session between you and her? We could sell tickets and make millions. Half the Western world would pay big money to see it. And I'd get a ringside seat, of course." On the stairs, Ruth turned sharply and brought her clenched fist to his nose, looking down at him from the steps. Mocking indignation flashed in her eyes, and she purred. "Celia and I have a hot, loving, and very personal relationship, and I will not allow it to be defiled by your need for personal and financial fulfillment." Then she moved closer to his ear and whispered hotly, "You'll just have to... oh, 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 be, Z, I, T, be this lover." Ooh! John straightened up and purred, "Yes, ma'am," and then said hoarsely, "Let's go take a shower while that picture is imprinted in my sick little brain." He playfully slapped her ass and added, "Hurry up. I see a long shower session in your near future. The end."